Thank you, Senator Nelson. We certainly appreciate your views on issues facing the nation, and we hope that you will accept this gift as a small token of our appreciation for being here today. Thank you, Senator.
Shall I sit down?
No, you can stay at the podium. You can stay at the podium. And now we'll do a second round of question card pickup. So if you do have a question for the senator, please raise your question in the air, and one of our volunteers will come pick that up from you. We will start off our questions with 2 questions from the Palm Beach State College students. So if one of the students would please ask the first question.
Sure. Hi, Senator Nelson.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Diane. I'm from Palm Beach State College. I'm a non-traditional student at the college, and I have been enrolled since 2007, seeking my degree in multiple fields, and now am in my Bachelor of Applied Science for Business. My question is, with the employment outlook remaining bleak, what reassurance can you provide to students for future employment in their field of study? Or is our generation going to have to live at home forever?
Well, I know it might be a sign of the times that our older children are moving back in with us. But if we can get this economy moving, then it's going to produce the jobs. And some of the things that I've discussed with you here today is what it's going to take to get the economy moving. Remember, you've got to have a political system that can reach consensus in order to get these things done. The president can't do it by fiat. You've got to pass the laws to enable it. Now, students ought to be, as you have indicated in your question, most concerned because when, first of all, your student aid is being cut back, when your tuition is going up at the state universities, and many students coming out of college, graduating, then have huge debts, and all of a sudden they can't find gainful employment, then that's another grave, grave concern. Take, for example, remember when I talked about how we've got to have spending cuts, and that's part of the whole procedure of going through and lowering the deficit. A deficit is created because if this is in balance, this is spending and this is tax revenue, if what it was in 2001 when I gave my maiden speech, that the revenue was here and the spending was here, the difference was a surplus. But then what happened is it went this way, that the revenue's down here and the spending is here. And so as you try to get back to that differential, if you just go out and whack spending on domestic discretionary programs, in other words, programs that are not defense, that are domestic spending programs of the federal government, there's no way that you can write that. You can't do it. You'd eliminate every student loan. You'd eliminate all those Pell Grants, the work-study program. You'd eliminate the Department of Education. And by the way, there are some people in Washington that want to do that. And that's to recognize that 94% of all educational expenditures are not from the federal government, it's from the state and local governments. Only 6% of all spending in education is coming from the federal government, but they're important programs, such as the Title I. For example, the school lunch program, under the theory that a kid can't learn if the kid's hungry. You'd have to start whacking out all of those. And you can go through all of this money that, fortunately, I've been able to help get in to restore the Everglades. That's all domestic discretionary. That's coming through the Corps of Engineers. The $100 million that was just announced by the Secretary of Agriculture that's going to buy up the conservation easements to the north of the lake on all of the ranches that will keep them from being developed and use best management practices as a result of acquiring the conservation easement, and the ranchers still continue the traditions that they've had in their families for generations. What's the result? The result is the water coming into Lake Okeechobee is going to be cleaner, and that water ultimately goes into the Everglades. That program would be completely eliminated. You cannot get back to balance, even over the course of 10 years, just whacking domestic spending programs. And that's why we've got to be creative, and that's why I respectfully suggest to you to consider the one place that, given that we can't get 60 votes for any kind of revenue increase, but you could get it in the way that I have described in a reform of the tax code. Thank you.
Second question from Palm Beach State College.
Good afternoon, Bill Nelson, Senator Bill Nelson. My name is Emmanuel Fernandez, and I am representing Palm Beach State College. I'm currently a member of the Honors College, and I am the vice president of PTK, which is an honor society, and current president of the Political Science Forum Club at my school. And my question goes as follows. What can young people do to help shift the culture of politics today? Or is this even possible?
Well, I would refer you to some of the comments that I have made. Young people, you know, if you speak out, other folks will pay attention. You're not happy, and this spans the generations. This is not just young people. Nobody's happy with the way this political system is evolving right now. If in our political system you could have the personal relationship that the two senators from Florida have, where it's one of respect and constant communication. And fortunately, Florida has always had a tradition of that. It was so with Bob Graham and Connie Mack. It was so with me and Mel Martinez. And it's so with Marco Rubio and me. You got to start there. You got to start with civility in the public square. You got to speak out that you will not stand for a situation in which a Congresswoman, Gabby Giffords, goes to meet her constituents and 6 people get gunned down and she is severely wounded. You got to speak out. I think the American people are ready to receive that message, and I think encouragement from folks like you, you can make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I neglected to mention just a handful of people who are here today. Mayor Gail Caniglio from Palm Beach, and Dr. Dennis Gallen, president of Palm Beach State College, and Ariella Klein, who is on the student trustee board for Palm Beach State College and is an intern in Senator Nelson's office. So I wanted to recognize the 3 of you. Now, Senator, you had mentioned at the beginning of your speech, you had talked about partisanship, collegiality. So we'll start off with a member question who is on that same theme. This member wants to know, to what do you attribute the loss of collegiality and cooperation in Congress?
That's a very good question. Something has happened in the last decade. Something has especially changed in the last 2 decades. Phil Lewis, Senator Phil Lewis, sitting right out there, certainly knows this. In a state legislature that he participated in, when, by the way, some of the giants, the leaders of that legislature came from right here, from Palm Beach County, and he is certainly one. Something has changed. Now, let's see. What has changed? Well, you know, we came out of World War II, and by the way, it was hard for the president to get us in that war. We were an isolationist attitude country. He had to go through all the gyrations of political fakery through the Lend-Lease Act to get equipment and supplies to the UK that was trying to hold off Hitler. But we came out of that. Really, we were secure. You remember the result of the 50s. Those of you who were, that was a great time of the 50s. We were electing heroes like Dwight Eisenhower as president. Along comes then, after Eisenhower, an attractive young president, which inspired a lot of my generation, and which, as I said earlier, made public service very attractive to someone like me. But then we started to sour into the mid and late 60s in a war that was very unpopular. I wore the uniform of this country during that time, and it is true. I mean, you can't believe it now in the honor and respect that we give to our military. It is true that soldiers coming home in uniform from Vietnam were spit upon. And then you went into, as you get into the 70s and on into the 80s, what Time magazine chronicled on its cover, the me generation. Suddenly, young people were more looking at themselves. You come through some rough patches, and then here we are, prosperity in the 90s. People were feeling pretty good, and then all of these things that have happened in the last decade that I mentioned. Now, things have now exacerbated the sharpness of the politics. First of all, there's instant communication. 10 years ago, we didn't have it like we have it today. You can reach out instantly on the internet to people of like mind and get them stirred up and produce a result. At the same time, we start to see the echo chambers of a particular philosophy or ideology start to appear on our cable channels, so that it becomes a reinforcer with the division of politics that we're seeing as people are divided because of instant communication. And, you know, you think back to the beginning of the country, Hamilton and Jefferson, they were at it. The politics was very sharp back then, but communication was slow. People had time to think about it. They had time to read about it. I mean, we even had, a duel that Aaron Burr took out Alexander Hamilton. They settled it in a very disruptive way, their political differences. But when you take the political differences and you exacerbate them with the technology of instant communication, the echo chamber, and then so much of television news is not news, it's entertainment, or it's what is the extreme, what is the kinky, what is going to get greater audience for the advertisers. You mix all of that together, and I've only scratched the surface. There are a lot of other things. But that is what I would commend to your consideration.
Thank you, Senator.